All right, buddy. I know that we have a lot to cover. There's a lot of ground, a lot of topics. There's a tournament. There was a patch. There's like things that we haven't gotten to yet. But I got something that I want to share with you, and I need to selfishly take up the top of the show. I think I do that anyways.
Yes. What is it? Tell me. Regale us with a tale.
So I've known about this for about 72 hours, and I've wanted to do the podcast so bad just because I've wanted to talk to you about it and haven't been able to tell you yet. So I found out
you're no longer a virgin.
What? That's not true. But not for the reason that the
You're
joke
still
is...
still a virgin?
No, wait.
Oh, no, Joe.
What really defines... I think incels have a bad rap. I don't like this bit anymore. I'm gonna power through it.
Okay.
But no. Speaking of sex, I found out that my grandfather isn't my grandfather. Like, by blood and DNA. Just this week. Just this week. I found out that
Wait. Whoa. Okay, maybe I'm a bad friend here, but didn't you already tell me something about... Wait, I don't remember this.
Let me tell you what I think you might know, and then I'll backtrack because I don't know if I've said this on the show. My mother was not raised by her parents, and no one really knew why because it was never explained to us. But I think I have a pretty good idea why now. I think I have a pretty good idea why. So about 6 years ago, I took a 23andMe, and I saw my DNA results, and it looked odd because I was surprised at the amount of indigenous American that was in me, particularly indigenous Mexican. I was like 9%, and my mom took a 23andMe, and it had more than that. And I'm like, well, that's weird. That must mean that like grandpa has like some family history that we just don't know about, like somewhere in the tree, right? And I just wrote it off. But last week, my sister took an Ancestry.com test, which is different than 23andMe, and these are not advertisements. They want to pay us. We need way more money. She took an Ancestry.com test, and my mom also took one with her because she wanted to see if there was any difference in the results from 23andMe and Ancestry. And also, her brother took an Ancestry test about 5 years ago, just on a whim for fun, right? So she didn't have any family in 23andMe aside from myself, but she has family who've taken Ancestry.com tests. And we get the results back, and I'm looking at them, and I'm going, I don't think something adds up here, because when you are siblings, you share 50% of your DNA. That's when you have the same parents, you share about 50% of your DNA. Similar with a parent. When you only share one parent, you have 25% of the same DNA as your sibling. And my mom and her brother only share 23% of their DNA. And my uncle has none of the indigenous Mexican Spanish that my mom has. Ergo, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I took a biology class. I think I know how this works. I don't think this is like a mistake or an outlier. Mom, I think that you have a different dad. And she's like, well, that probably checks out. And I'm like, what?
She's like, yeah, makes sense.
Like, this might explain some long-standing 5-decade-old, half-century family secret as why she was raised by her grandparents, why it seems like the family unit wasn't that sturdy, why all of her baby pictures make her look, honestly, much more ethnic than her parents. and it just kind of solves for a lot of questions. So that's interesting from her standpoint. It's interesting from my standpoint because I'm like, wait a second, Tori, my sister, like, we don't know who our grandfather is. And furthermore, I found out that I'm a quarter Mexican. I had no idea. I had literally no idea. So this week is
wait.
Wild.
Can I ask?
Ask away all the questions. All the questions. Go for it.
Okay, you did not realize that you were a quarter Mexican, but what are your other ancestors? Because you are not a pale individual. So I feel like that should have been a tip off somewhere.
A lot of it is from my mom's side, the strongest majority is Southern Italian and Sicilian, and generally that skin tone skews into a bit like a more olive.
Yeah, olive. Yeah.
So I always chalked it up to that, right?
But you got reddish. You've got reddish tones.
Well, right now, I mean, I should change. Anybody who's watching the video and trying to suss out, like, my light is orange on me. Like, this is white. Sure, that's a different color. Yeah. Like,
but if anything, that only sometimes it makes the red more apparent.
Oh yeah.
You and I have some reddish tones. I also have reddish tones, but I also know that my ancestors are Native American. So. Yeah.
So. I've never thought about it much. Like, even when I got my 23andMe test years ago, like, I just chalked it up to, like, there's something that we don't know, like, it's whatever. But I never thought that my grandmother had children with two different people at, like, the age of, like, 19-ish. I'm like, I have so many questions for her. What the fuck was she doing? I mean, obviously she was getting around a little bit, but, like, what? What?
Okay, so are your grandfather and grandmother still together?
Yes, and they have been for my entire life, and they're both still alive. Okay. And I don't know where this goes from here because, like, it's not really my place. It's more of my mother's place if she ever wants to really, like, be confrontational about it. But I have a lot of questions, and I think I know the answer to them. But I just have questions like, why did this need to be kept a secret for my mom's entire life? How many people know? Why are you still lying about it? Is my real grandfather actually alive? Not that it really matters, but, like, I just have questions.
So, when you say your mother was raised by her grandparents, correct. Was your uncle also raised?
No.
By the grandparents?
He was raised.
What's the age difference there?
3 years.
Okay. Okay. So wait, they were separated?
Basically, yes. My mom was raised by her grandparents, and my uncle was raised by his biological parents, of which him and my mother share the mom, but it's the dad that's different.
I see.
But no one's ever talked about this.
That is quite the family secret.
Yeah, like, do you just like? I feel like it's gonna be hard to just pretend like for the rest of their lives I don't know. Like, I feel like there's gonna be a point in time where I'm gonna be like, "Yo, grandma, why condoms existed?"
They're gonna see you, and you're gonna be looking between your grandpa and your grandma, just kind of like looking between the two.
See, now
looking at your own skin, looking at her, looking at him.
When I took my original 23andMe test, I told them, "Let me buy one for you," and they refused. They absolutely refused. And that also makes sense now. Like, I feel like there's so many.
Oh no, they're gonna crack the case. technology has taken us too far. This is a cold case cracked.
And then, like, I have empathy for them because I can't imagine what it's like to keep that secret for so long. Because it has to have, like, almost come up a number of times, especially when we took the DNA test the original set of times, where it's like, hey, Mom, where did you get all that indigenous American from? And it's like, they're like, those things must be, like, bad or wrong. Like,
yeah.
Anywho, so I learned that I'm a quarter Mexican and have family on that side that are like tracked through 23andMe this week, and I never knew that. And it doesn't really change anything in my life, I don't think. But it's wild to think that I could have come this far and not known that.
So we actually have a somewhat similar story, though I have always known this. My father was abandoned, and so by my grandfather, and so he was raised by my grandmother, single mother, and so I've always known that my grandfather is not my biological grandfather on my dad's side. But I do know that my biological grandfather died when I was like real young, and apparently, he just kind of like fucked off, abandoned my dad and the family, and then apparently died broke in a gutter somewhere. He was a drunk and a gambler and abandoned his family, and that's how he died.
Oh, your dad made it out okay.
Yeah. So that's and he is actually where, and are we supposed to say Indigenous American or Native American?
I was saying, well, no, I was saying that what it says in the 23andMe or the Ancestry is Indigenous American. So I was just like reading it verbatim. I don't actually know the proper politics.
Okay. So there's nothing wrong with me saying Native American.
I don't think so.
But that is where my the Native American side, because my mom's side, it's all like Irish. So.
Yeah, mine's similar but reversed. My dad is like basically 100% French German. Like his ancestry breakdown, like the pie chart is basically all one color. It's like you're German, you're French-ish, and my mom's looks like a rainbow. Because it's like there's like traces from Africa and a lot of South America and like Mexico and Spain and everything, and it's like so most of my diversity is really coming from her, who has a lot more that she doesn't know about. Also, like she can't go to the doctor and say in good faith like, I don't know if my dad had cancer. Like it's wild.
Okay, so I have wanted to take one of those, but don't they have don't they like sell your information? Isn't it kind of a scummy business?
So you can opt in or opt out. I believe it's opt out of having your information shared. Okay. Both publicly and also like to research companies. Right. So you can choose to like have your ancestry be available to the public, but not share your DNA data with researchers, or vice versa, or either or both.
Gotcha. I just heard that a number of years ago, so I was just like, oh, I guess that would be nice to do, but I never went out of my way to do it simply because of that fact.
They oftentimes have them on sale, like around like Mother's Day and Father's Day and the holidays, and it's like $50. And I understand people who are like, I don't know or need to know or care, whatever. I find it super interesting, especially the ones that like will tell you like any recessive genes you have that could be problematic for baby making. Not that I'm worried about that either, but like it's just I am totally open and okay both with knowing that type of like personal biological data, and also I don't mind sharing it. If they sell my info and then it helps like some database know more about humans, like whatever, I'm not too worried about the government or Skynet or something. But yeah, so
you should be.
But your opinions are super valid if you don't want to share it. I understand both sides.
I don't care that much. I just when I had heard that, I have a feeling that that is something that they probably changed, this whole opt-out situation, and that it used to be just you signed up and they didn't say anything about selling your information, and then went and did that. So.
Or it's in the middle of a big NDA and like you don't really you don't read it, so it's whatever. Anywho, that's my week. You've had an interesting week, but not because I think your grandma had infidelity issues or you found out about a different. You found out more about your genetic makeup, but because you came back from Dubai.
Wait! I've actually got one more thing.
Oh shit! Okay. I'm sorry.
My family actually has. Well, I just literally just thought of this. My mom's side that I said was all Irish. They actually had I'm sure they do still have it. They have a family ancestry book that actually goes back surprisingly far. And I know one of my like great uncles or something. His name was Ignatius Aloysius Onderzeek.
Wow, that is. They don't name kids that anymore.
What kind of name was that? Like even back then, I have to imagine other kids were like, "What the fuck is wrong with your name? Like that's not normal. I don't care what kind of time or culture it is. Like what the fuck?" I remember this. I discovered this like fucking 15 or 20 years ago, and I still remember it because like, how the fuck am I ever gonna forget that name? Like Ignatius Aloysius Onderzeek. Oh my god, that guy was probably a character and a half. Jesus.
Onderzeek. Every one of those names is very strong.
I remember thinking I was disappointed that his last name was Onderzeek, because like a name like Ignatius Aloysius, you naturally want to have another ush at the end, you know? And instead it's Onderzeek. Like what the fuck?
Having that book has to be kind of cool. I imagine that there's probably, I mean, that information like impacts more than just like your tree, right? Like that's. I wish there was more public ancestry information almost, because it seems like we're doing so much work to like collectively piece it back together. Yeah, I contacted a couple people on my biological grandfather's side who had 23andMe accounts. Yeah, I said, "Hey, this is wild. Just wanted to say hi. Also, I have a couple questions if you don't mind me asking." So I'll report back if I ever find out his alive status.
Okay.
Or
and
his
if
name.
you find out he's alive, and let's just say he happens to be within reasonable driving distance, like less than a day of travel, would you go see him?
I don't know. I think that the fact that I don't have a strong feeling of no means that it probably edges closer to the yes. I feel like when you know the answer,
my answer would be no immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
If my grandfather was still alive, I know I wouldn't go out of my way to see him. I'd be like, nothing about my life is going to change by seeing him. I
would be more interested in seeing a picture than anything else, honestly. Like that is the one thing that I would be way more interested in. But I wouldn't instantly say no. Honestly, it would probably depend on like my mom's consent and what she would be interested in. I would probably follow her lead there because it's way more impactful for her than me. It's her dad.
yeah, just a bit. Well, that was very interesting. But yes, I am back from Dubai. I went to the United Arab Emirates and went to Dubai and casted a tournament there. And it
casted
was good.
A lot. Every time I tuned in, I feel like I heard you.
Hell yeah, I got to cast. I only had to panel like once or twice. It was amazing. I only had to host once, and I think I only paneled like once or twice. I think I paneled the lower bracket finals and then some other game. So it was great. I had a great time casting. I very much enjoyed that. I got to cast with Notail, 2-time TI winner. That was fun. He is an incredibly difficult person to cast with, and I mean that in like a good way. It's like when Dota players call other Dota players annoying. It sounds negative, but they mean it in a positive way. He is incredibly hard to cast with because I mean, first of all, he's just a ball of fucking energy, right? So you like wherever he goes in excitement, you have to follow him, right? So I no longer am dictating the energy of the cast for the most part. That is mostly him that is dictating it. And I feel like as a play-by-play, you should probably always be at or ahead of your co-caster in that regard. It's kind of weird if you're not. And he also is constantly delivering large amounts of dense information, which I have to parse, think about in my head, and then be able to like further explain to the audience, or I need to be able to come up with a response of some kind, maybe a follow-up question, whatever it is. It just means that that casting with him is not very relaxing, which is good. I mean, it put me on like, it made me like really concentrate and focus on the cast and stuff. So.
You were doing a lot of interpreting, is what it felt like to me, and especially in the grand finals when Kuro was there too. It felt like you had to evolve a little bit to be more of a facilitator than anything else.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's a little hard to do. So that like I feel like that's relatively natural for me, considering my casting partners have all been pretty high level. But this is obviously even higher level. But they aren't natural casters. So they don't just give you a piece of information. They give you an essay on Dota. So that essay's longer than the normal co-caster like bit that they're gonna give you. It's longer, denser. There's more information there, and there's less space for me to work with. Which I have no problem with. I always tell my co-casters, do you want me to talk more? Do you want me to talk less? That's like one of the first things I'll ever ask them after one cast. I'll be like, more or less, which one do you want? So I'm always happy to like accommodate them. But in order to translate that sort of stuff, I do need like a bit of time, a bit of back and forth. So.
It seemed like, did you have a harder time in the grand finals? Because I noticed a couple times, and this is like super subtle and nitpicky, that like you were starting to go and they weren't done. When that happens to when that happens to you, that just happened right now. How pleasantly ironic. When that happens, does it help to be standing next to them and you can kind of like look at them, or are you still focusing on the game and just kind of working off your ears?
I kind of both. Like I do look at my co-casters. Some co-casters look a lot more. Somebody like really intently looks at you when they're casting. I don't remember who it is. I feel like I think it might be SVG. Did I ever cast with SVG? Anyway, somebody I've casted with that was a former pro player looks at you a lot when they're casting, and because like that's sort of my nature to be accommodating, it actually pulled me out of looking at the game as much because I didn't want them to just be looking at me and feel like I wasn't, because if you think about it, if you think about the way the conversation works in commentating, it's not very natural, because how many times are you talking to somebody and not looking at them like for long periods of time, right?
Yeah. Not really.
It's like normally if you're a person to person, like you're going to look at because that's part of communication, is being able to read like their facial tics and responses and the emotions that come up, right? So it is a little unnatural not to be looking at them. So I didn't want them to feel like bad about the fact that I wouldn't look at them while they're talking to me. But it just meant that I was looking at the game less because I could feel them looking at me all the time. Shit, I hope I remember who that was, because it was such a weird feeling. Because if you get like a regular commentating person will naturally just like focus on the game and just like talk and just expect the person to listen. But whenever you cast with somebody who is not a natural commentator, who doesn't like already do it, there are certain differences, and that is one of them. Another one of them is the spacing. So yeah, the finals, it means I did have to jump in more. I still read comments about like how like I didn't talk very much, and like how like I was shut out of the cast or something like that, as a negative, which I personally felt like it was a positive. I felt like unless there was action happening, I would want to talk as little as possible. The only reason sometimes that I wanted to jump in was either that like I felt like I could facilitate a point to the audience a little bit better, or that like I had a follow-up question, which if I have a follow-up question, it probably means the audience has a follow-up question. Or like I would ask, or I'd be like make a comparison or something. Basically something that like, is it like this? And then, they would be able to say, or they say something like, this matchup is easy. And they'll just say that and keep moving because they're used to people knowing what they're talking about. And so I need to be able to jump in. I'm like, do you mean because of this? And like, it almost doesn't matter what I say. Is this matchup good because this spell? And it doesn't matter what I say, wrong or right. They're going to respond and go further into detail. And it feels more natural. It feels a little bit more natural than me going, can you explain that? Can you delve? It's like I'm a therapist at that point in time. Can we delve in a little deeper there? Yeah, I think. Let's focus on that point, shall? It's a little bit more natural if I offer something myself. So
I feel like if you're in a position between so you're on that desk with those people who have won 3 out of 10 internationals collectively, and you're just there. I think that your
and
job
they're also
is
in 4 different grand finals. Wait, 5.
5. Because Kuroky was...
They actually made it. Those 2 have been in half of all the grand finals of TI.
Yes.
Holy fuck.
So when you're in that position, I feel like you should... If you're going to pick either too much or too little to contribute, you choose too little because those people in that pairing is kind of what people are interested in the novelty of. So, like, if that means you take a step back, like, the criticism of, like, oh, man, I wish Cap was, like, a little more involved. It's like, wait a second, how many times have you heard Notail and Kuroky cast the grand finals together? Let them try and have a moment, even if it's not technically the best casting you've ever heard. There's a novelty to that, which I think is important.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that's I think a better version of that point was actually the very first time that Notail casted was casting OG. And he did this bias cast, right, where he was actively cheering for OG. And I kind of let that go. I didn't really fight against that too much at all because, yeah, the novelty factor. I saw so many complaints about it. It was very polarizing cast.
That's great.
And yeah, and that's what I told Kyle. I said it's good because first of all, it's a group stage game. Like it's not the playoffs. Like people, man, the people really just lose all context when there's something that they don't immediately like. People lose all context in that regard. It's a group stage game. Like, yeah, let an experimental cast go out, Like, it's not that big of a deal. This is Notail cast. He's not going to cast every single OG game. He's casting his own team. He's doing his own professional cast for the first time, right? He did panel for TI, and he did some casting for Summit, but this is the first time he was hired as a commentator and got to do it. Just like... have some fun with it. Like the fact that people couldn't appreciate the fun side of, and some people, and again, it was very polarizing. There were some people who really fucking loved it, but there, the people who were just like, this is terrible and stuff like, can you just get out of your own skin for a second? Like just appreciate like what's going on here. A 2-time TI winner is casting a game and he's actively cheering for he also owns the team that is casting right now, and he's going to be biased and he's going to cheer for his team. Like, yes, it's going to be a biased cast. Just let it be. It's something new. Just appreciate it for what it is.
I'm such a strong believer in the idea that polarizing things are the best things, and apathy is really the true enemy. Across entertainment and broader. So the fact that there were people who were hating on it and like felt really like some way about it only confirms to me that it was successful even more. Like, that's proof positive. If people weren't talking about it, then I'd be like, maybe Notail isn't like, that good at the thing. But shockingly enough, he's pretty good at doing the thing.
Yeah. And I think we did. So that happened the first time, and I just kind of let him go hog wild. I feel like in some ways I actually like almost encouraged him to keep going down that route. Mm-hmm. But then I believe we casted a game in the playoffs where he casted OG again. This time I think it was OG versus Nigma. And that time around, I pushed against him a little bit more. There was like this line of like, Notail, your team, what happened? It helped that OG also lost compared to the game that OG played that we casted, which I think they won. Mm-hmm. I think it was versus Secret. I might be wrong about that, but but that one I pushed back a little bit more against because the novelty was gone at that point in time, right? The first time around, you let him do whatever you want. The second time around, you try and create more of a even cast, even if he's going to be super biased. Mm-hmm. But the funniest fucking thing was how mad Notail got reading the comments of Redditors who complained about the bias casting. Now, obviously, he knew he was being biased.
Yeah.
But the fact that that Redditors went over the top in how biased he was and said like, oh, he wouldn't say anything nice about Secret, and Notail would get bad about that and be like, I said this, and this about Secret, like I said Secret's one of the best, and he would get mad about that, and I'm just sitting there fucking laughing because it's like, I tell Notail, I was like, all right, now take this little emotion, you were being biased, but you're mad that people are calling you more biased than you actually were. They're exaggerating how one-sided the cast was, which it was very one-sided. But he did say some nice things about Secret, and he did point out there's ways for them to win and such. And I was just imagine that you tried to do an unbiased commentary. And you had people calling you out, calling you were biased. In fact, some of them call you biased for either side. You get one comment that says you were biased towards one team, and another comment that says you were biased towards the other. Now imagine how fucking irritating it is.
Someone called PSJ up. so someone be like, hey, Brian.
Like, holy fuck. So it was so fucking funny. It was so cathartic to watch the 2-time TI winner get riled up because some fucking Reddit comments called him more biased than maybe he was or something. It was fucking hilarious. But
speaking about being riled up in Reddit comments, I opened a Reddit thread and I think that you typed a thesis paper to someone. I
lost it.
And then I closed it and I genuinely didn't even read what you wrote. I just thought to myself, Cat might be overreacting here. And now I'm asking.
No, I wasn't overreacting. No.
Well, what's up with that?
Incorrect. Okay, so I did the grand finals with Kuro and Notail. The first bit was me and Notail. Then game 2 and 3 were Kuro, Notail, and Sumail. And those casts were a little off balance because Notail takes up a lot of space, and Sumail. I mean, like, people wanted Sumail to speak up more, but like, just imagine you're Sumail and you're sitting there with a TI winning captain and a 2-time TI winning captain, legends of the game who have like so much to say, and obviously Sumail has like great things to say as well. But like, are you really going to barge in and be like, oh, now it's my turn to say things. You know, like
Sumail's-
Notail's already
yeah.
talking 75%. You know?
Sumail's personality is also just really subdued, right? Like,
Yeah.
Versus Notail, and like, you know, part of the reason why people like Notail is because he is so boisterous, right? That's not fake. So when you get a cast with someone who is like painfully extroverted and loud and okay talking, and then two people who are just, you know, more passive in different degrees, then like of course Sumail says less stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, Notail had the responsibility of play-by-play, so he's trying to get into his analysis, and then action happens, and so he keeps talking. Whereas, like, the natural division of play-by-play and co-caster, color commentators, usually the color commentator provides analysis, and the play-by-play, maybe he provides some analysis, but he mostly focuses on directing conversation and calling the fights. So there's a more natural division. There's Notail's talking 75% of the time because he's doing double duty, right? So, so those casts were a little off balance, but it was still good. It was still interesting. And then they put me in for game 4 and 5. I think part of it was the fact that game 4 could have been the final game. So, you know, obviously you probably want an experienced commentator to close out the tournament because, you know, you're going to have the congratulations moment, you know, whatever that is. So, and then also just to, like, you know, okay, we did the experiment with Sumail. It was good. Like, it was fun, but let's go ahead and change it up. Put a play-by-play caster in there that'll hopefully make things more even. And I think it did. Notail was able to have a lot more one-on-one conversation with Kuro, which I think naturally divides up the space a bit more.
But what were you mad about? Because what was the genesis of people being upset?
What am I not mad about? Okay, so I
we're
finished
upset
up
about a lot of things.
I finished up that grand final, and I think it was pretty good. I thought the cast was pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. Also, I was pretty happy with the tournament in general because I thought it was a very exciting tournament. I thought it was pretty good. And also the fact that Boom went through the lower bracket and made it back through the grand finals. I thought that was really good. As somebody who has responded a lot to Reddit criticism on this issue, because I think Reddit, it's a general spiraling of any opinion, right? Once the general
tone,
community, hive mind, whatever, like starts going in a certain direction, becomes a race to the bottom, right? The more you exaggerate a certain point, the more upvotes you're going to get, right? It's like, it's not just good enough to say, like, I don't think this commentator is very good. It becomes, this commentator is a worthless piece of shit, and he's a thief for taking money, for ever taking any gigs. You know, like, just an example. We've seen that happen with commentators, and it's like, it gets way out of fucking line, right? Remember Mott? Mott was not the best play-by-play caster, but he also wasn't the worst. But he got put into, I think unfairly, into certain positions, and the community fucking went out of their way to vilify him. Like, they just talk so much shit about him. And that has been happening for the last year and a half, I would say, ever since, like, we play Animajor, but it built up from before then. The DPC circuits, just generally is going to create more of a tribal viewing atmosphere, right?
For regions, right? You're talking,
your
like,
teams. Yeah. Yes, like I watch my region with my teams, and my favorite players and my talent are covering my region, and it becomes very much like me, like our stuff. This is us, and that's them over there, and you know, I see a lot of their guys getting, where's our guys, and so it becomes that. And so, you know, like I said before, we talked about this. There is a kernel of truth to all this stuff. And yes, the kernel of truth is that, like, there's plenty of talent that are not as authoritative on other regions as maybe they should be, or maybe they shouldn't be. I don't really know. It's hard to keep track of like 6 regions at once. I'll tell you right now, I'm covering 5 regions, like as in like actively watching 5 regions. I'm not watching South America. If anybody ever gives me shit for not knowing enough about South America, you will 100% get that point. Because I'm only covering, I have only got so much time in the fucking week. I'm covering 5 regions. You know, like I'm as a person covering 2 regions, and I will try and keep track of 3 more. But I can't do 1 more on top of that. It's just not gonna happen. And honestly, covering like knowing South America has diminishing returns for my job, right? If South America is the weakest region, like knowing the 3rd best team in South America very likely does nothing for me ever in like potentially ever in my career, right? If
it's
I'm
also the
casting
region that
international events
that
and
you're
they never
probably
show up.
yeah, it's also the region that in theory like for DPC seasons you're working the least. Like you could see yourself around NA because ESL does it or like fucking BTS does it. And also
Also there's a slight thing where I have casted plenty of South America in the past. Mm-hmm. And I also play pubs with these guys, and like just in general I've covered a lot of NASA, so I at least have some like background there, so I can talk about players and like my personal experience with them even if I don't know the team itself the best.
So is the chief complaint that set you off here like another in the series of like Cap doesn't know about region?
Yes. That is exactly it. And the complaint is like I accepted these complaints, you know, like even though I've been casting professionally since 2014, and when I was working in Join Dota, I was casting Southeast Asian games. Mm-hmm. I was there for like, if anybody remembers, say one of the first ESL One of Frankfurt's, maybe the very first one. One of them had a Southeast Asian qualifier, and in the grand finals, I believe Rave won the JO's ult team, and they won off of the back of going for a throne race where there were 2 different 4-staffs where they literally 4-staffed their hard carry around the throne as he was hitting it. Like, it was some of the fucking wildest game-ending best. I think it was Game 5, too. Might have been Game 4. But it was, like, one of the wildest endings I've seen in a while. And I remember posting that on Reddit. And I remember, like, I casted that. I posted it on Reddit. It got, like, zero response whatsoever from the community, even though I thought it was such a cool moment to close out the final. I was there casting that. I casted Southeast Asia. And so to be like, yeah, the comments that say like, oh, you don't know anything about Southeast Asia. It's like, okay, that kind of bothers me, but whatever. I get it. But then this year, I actively went out of my way. Well, okay, not like actively, you know, I won't oversell this too much, but I started out the season wanting to cast other regions. And it also coincided with the idea that like I would be able to, because of COVID, I would be able to spend more time at home before I had to travel for events. And so I ended up I literally covered Southeast Asia this year. And to have people saying like literally just lying about me in comments. And the fucking wildest part is if they were watching Southeast Asia on Twitch. Now, it's possible they were watching it somewhere else. YouTube's much better for Southeast Asia viewing, for example. But if they were following the official broadcast, they would know that I was there, that I was on the panel, that I was watching these games, that I was doing the analysis of these series, that I had analysis on all of these teams at the start of the season. And that I was there for post-game interviews, that I was there supporting, like, I very early was like, Boom is the team to watch. Because I watched them at the tournament beforehand, and I think I watched them at a tournament before that, and I said, this team is, like, super sick. I straight up said, for example, the thing that really ticked me off is that people were like, people literally made up a point of, like, that me and Effie said, like, why did Tino get replaced? It could not have been more obvious. It could not have been more obvious. You go back through the Southeast Asian DPC panels, those first fucking weeks, I literally, this is some of the most shade I've ever thrown at a player. I literally called Boom 4 good players. Tino was the obvious man out, you know, like Sheepstick would literally just keep calling me out on like the fact that I was a Tino hater. And so the fact that like people had this idea that I would be surprised that Tino got replaced when I arguably throughout my career have never dumped on a player more, to a point that I like felt bad about it. And I legitimately think he's gotten better since he started. He was just the obvious man out. He played a best of 5 grand finals with them before the DPC started. And I went on record saying that I think that Boom should have won all 5 games. But it was a 3-2 score because Tino threw the games. The games that they lost, he threw them. Like, that's why I was so confident, because I analyzed those games and I was like, Tino was throwing the shit out of these games. And I said, they should have, it was a close score, but like Boom is a much better team than I think OB Neon or something like that in the grand finals. I can't remember who it was. Mm-hmm. I said, they're a much better team because Tino threw 2 of those games. They actually had like 4 or 5 out of those games were Boom games. And so like I had made that point so fucking clear. To like read people like literally just making shit up on a thin air about this sort of thing, it just fucking blew my goddamn mind. I was just like, what the fuck?
Because in that moment, you're like, there is 0% chance that I'm wrong about this.
Yeah, like I didn't go hard about it during Animajor, even though I think, you know, it was very much overblown, the BF Shea thing, and it got spread into like all the talent sort of thing. And the same thing happened at some point in time. There was a panel. I watched it live happen, and I knew it was going to happen. Resolution and Kyle were on panel with Shiver, and Shiver asked them who the coach was for Boom, and neither one of them knew. Right? And that gets turned into a thing where it's like, then the Southeast Asia fans are like, see, none of them know anything about us. Well, one is Rezo, a former pro player who operates in a region that almost never plays Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. and the other is Kyle, which
Kyle was like helping organize the tournament. Like, I mean, you know,
yeah, Kyle did pull double duty that one. He probably slept the least out of many people at that tournament. Not production, but of the talent, he certainly slept the least of anybody there because he was pulling double duty. He was like in charge of things and trying to make sure the tournament was good while also working the event. So, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like, just because they don't know doesn't mean like everybody else doesn't
The
know.
answer is Boom plays for Gladiators. Right?
What?
That's that.
What?
Yeah, like I don't know, like Mushi's
Gaming Gladiators. Yes.
Mushi's their coach, right? Okay, yeah.
Yes, Mushi is their coach.
Yeah,
and that is
Kyle,
also somebody
hire me, Kyle. Ugh.
That is also, if you know anything about me when it comes to coaches, I am very, very light on giving coaches any responsibility. I'll tell you that Bulba leads Evil Geniuses by quite a lot. But almost any other coach, I'll say very little about. You know, Zhao 8, RTK, the Chinese coaches, okay, we know they're more hands-on. We've seen it in True Sight and stuff like that.
I mean, Will does nothing.
But like all the other coaches, I'm really not going to say much about because we know very little about their impact. Obviously, I know the impact of Blitz, and I know that is actually significant, but I can't really ever say anything because people will just be like, well, it's your best friends with Blitz, whatever. So like, you know, I can never be that person to like toot Blitz's horn for him because it all means nothing to the audience. But I went to bat for like Mushi being one of the best coaches because like I could see he was outdrafting the fuck out of everybody in the DPC. And like every single post-game interview, whenever we would talk about draft or anything like that, strategy, Mushi. They would always say Mushi's name, you know? And they would talk about how Mushi is like, you know, like he's very serious, very hands-on. Like I heard all of that, you know? And like I set up Mushi as being like one of the more hands-on and one of the more influential coaches. And when I never say that about any coach, because I don't think it's right. I think sometimes people say, "Oh, you know, we can't forget about this person of the team," and really, I think literally sometimes panelists just say, "Oh, well, we can't forget about one of the most important people on the team. Don't forget about the coach." See, I know who the coach is. I know the coach is. You don't know what the coach does. You know, maybe he's just there to give, like, puppy Kuro Notail. Like, maybe he's just there to give the coach a massage, a back rub during the fucking draft. Like you don't know what he does. So, like, just because you know he's there doesn't mean you should give him any praise. I feel like you should always give that praise to the players. And if you overstep or undersell them, then the players themselves can, like, tout out their coach, or the organization can. But, like, I never want to take, because if there's only 100% you can give responsibility to a win. And if I give some of it to the coach, it means I'm taking some of it away from the players. So, and if I don't know how much the coach gives, then I'm not going to give them any percentage that the players hold, So the fact that I went out of my way to, like, rep Mushi, I was confident enough to do that. It's like another thing that I was like, I know that I have actively set this up. I've actively talked about this team, that sort of thing. And it just, like, I lost it. I lost it reading through these Reddit comments of just like, oh, these guys don't know anything. Where are we going to get our people and stuff? Why don't they get anybody who ever covers Southeast Asia? And I'm just like, I'm right fucking there. I'm right fucking there. What do you mean? So I don't think I went over the board because I, what's funny is this was after the grand finals, which I thought that was a good grand finals cast. Mm-hmm. And I read these comments and I'm just like, fuck it. I'm done. I'm going in. And I do that for like 20 minutes. And then I go downstairs to the after party and I tell the other talent, I was like, I just lost it on Reddit. and they all wanted to read it, and Shiva and them read it, and people were like, yeah, that's fair. What you said was fair.
My first instinct was just, it's a lot of words.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a very verbose person when I'm angry.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Have you ever seen those clips of me fucking... Have you ever seen those clips of me raging on Reddit?
Yeah.
Listen, Quinn can be rather eloquent, I understand why, because, like, when I'm mad and I lose it, it's not "you're stupid." I need to really be able to elaborate how stupid you are.
Pinpoint where on the IQ curve I am and why it's below the mean. Like, it's fine. We did a lot of dancing around that, but we should probably take a hot second to talk about the actual tournament, aside from the very interesting casting situation and the criticism of the casting situation, because is this... And I'm going to open myself to criticism here because I don't know everything about Southeast Asia Dota. Okay? Mm-hmm. I want to disclaimer that up front before someone gets mad at me on the internet. Is this the first time a Southeast Asia team won an event of this caliber?
Well, the last time Southeast Asian team won an event, they won the summit. This is also another thing that I got wrong. This is actually one of the rare times I got something wrong on panel. And it was because in my head, I had these two things mixed up. So even now I'm mixing it up in my head. I believe, yeah. Fnatic won the summit right before ESL won LA. Remember that?
Yep, because we were there doing a podcast.
Offices.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And we're like, COVID.
So Fnatic won that event. And obviously that was a smaller event. But then before that, the very first major that occurred that season, TNC won with March and Tim's and other people. So the Fnatic was actually the first team to secure their ticket, or TNC rather, was the first team to secure their ticket to TI, and then that TI gets canceled. So that was the last time. Before that, yeah, it's been a while since Southeast Asia was like super like on top. Obviously, that still needs to happen for a major, but the last one was MDL Chengdu, and then the one before that, I think it was probably 2017, Fnatic placed 4th, I believe, at that event. So, I believe they got beat down by Evil Geniuses.
Yeah. TNC won an ESL 1, didn't they?
Possible. I mean, are you looking?
Hold on.
Are you looking at ESL? Because there was, during the online season, there was regional ESL ones.
TNC won ESL 1 Hamburg 2019.
Oh, okay.
They beat Gambit in the grand finals. Alliance came in 3rd. Beast Coast came in 4th.
Yeah. Beast Coast came in 4th. That's what it was, right? Because they had Misery and Tavo and King RD. Yeah, I remember that. No, because that was the highest South American team had placed in a while, but they also had like Misery and one other European on that team, so it was kind of like a weird situation.
God,
that was also kind of like a weird event. We was missing a fair number of teams, if I remember.
So yeah, so I would say comfortably that, like, you know, the amount of like truly large scale Southeast Asian wins at international LAN events is like probably this one that just happened, and then MDL Chengdu.
Yeah, depending on like, there was also that like eHome won some like DAC. And while they were a Chinese organization, I believe they had at least 2 Southeast. They had Ice Ice Ice, and I think they might have had somebody else that was a Southeast Asian player. So it's possible they might have even had 3, but I don't think so. Maybe it was Mushi, actually. That might have been Mushi and Ice 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 on eHome. But yes.
Regardless, though, it's really cool
other
that
top
Boom
placings.
won.
Yeah, other top placings is like Orange, TI3, and Zephyr, or no, not Zenith. Zenith at TI1. Those are the highest TI placings, I believe. C team has never been in the grand finals of TI.
Well, Boom looks pretty dank.
They're very good. Very good. Unfortunately, there were some teams missing from this event, so, you know. It's only so much credit you can give them when you're missing some of the best Western European teams and Chinese teams.
It feels like a small asterisk because there was still a lot of like talent there. But that being said, you know, it was interesting to see. I will never not keep an eye on both Nigma and Secret and see how, you know, Kuroky seems to have, you know, kicked it into gear for a LAN event and probably overperformed expectations, whereas Secret didn't do very well and now is role swapping people.
Are they? Is that? I didn't know that.
I thought I saw
shit,
that.
Is that hot news?
I thought I saw that Nisha and Sumail are switching positions.
Oh, really? I actually did not know anything about that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I have not been paying attention. Because I've been busy getting ready for 6 weeks in Sweden.
Yeah, I saw like a Reddit thread talking about that, how they were role swapping. I don't know if it's like confirmed or an experiment or like what's going on, but like, so they're still fishing around with people. Tundra, I think, had probably a satisfying event, and not just because they came in second, but because they're probably the team that came into the whole ordeal with the most haters because people were like, hey, y'all kicked Fada, y'all might be kind of shitty, I hope that you get last place. And then they proceeded to just do very well. So
they also had they also in the grand finals, do you know what happened game 1?
No, I did not watch the first game.
Okay. So game 1, they picked Legion Commander, and there was a bug at the time. So I don't know how people know this exactly. Obviously, somebody got some inside information somewhere, but basically what it appears to be, I'm not going to report this as fact, but what
allegedly,
there was an Aghanim Scepter that they were going to, an Aghanim Scepter upgrade that they were going to give Legion Commander, or maybe it was Shard, I don't know. That gave her moment of courage Jesus. Those abilities are awfully named. Moment of Courage, the one where she does the double hit. Mm-hmm. It gave it plus 75 damage. And I don't know what else. Probably just plus 75 damage. And that, while they didn't give her that, it was still bugged in the game. So her Moment of Courage did do that. So
the whole time?
Level 1. Yeah, the whole time.
What? Oh, no.
So she ends up playing mid. 9 plays Legion Commander mid against Ember Spirit. And you can go back and watch. This Ember Spirit gets fucking demolished. Because every single time he gets Moment of Courage, it's like a fifth of his health goes away. And Notail is just like, Notail knew about the bug, and he was talking about it in the cast, and we're watching, and one of the funniest things was like, he kept saying, this is not normal. This is not normal. And so that was just another reason for people to hate on Tundra, right? Because they are utilizing some bug in the game. Now, whether or not they knew about it and how ethical it is and like that sort of thing, Valve has a rule for Valve tournaments that it's like, you always come to us. If you have questions about this, come to us first. We will tell you whether or not you can use it, and then you can go ahead and use it. And we're not going to spread it around if we think it's fair. If that's intended in the game, where you can use it. But if it's not intended, obviously they're going to fix it. So they've had a pretty clear ruling, and I would guess this probably happened since TI3, because the fountain hooks. If I had to guess, that's probably where that rule kind of started, because that was a pretty insane, pretty egregious bug. It was abused by Navi at the time. So
I didn't see a lot of community sentiment about that. I might not have been digging through Reddit too hard.
It was just one more reason for the C fans to C fans and Tundra haters to latch on to fuck Tundra, right? Because they already didn't like them, and then Notail talks about that in the cast, and it to be clear, it demolished the Ember Spirit. There was very little that Yopaj could do to recover. So
and they won that game, right? Tundra won.
They won that game pretty heavily.
Did they ban Legion Commander in all 4 of the other drafts?
That was the weird thing, is that I don't think Legion Commander got banned the rest of the opening phase. So I think it still got banned. It just wasn't banned in the first 1-2. And to be honest, it's Legion Commander, even if you have that, you still need to have a good lane, right? It just so happens that Legion versus Ember Spirit is insanely Legion favored, and becomes even more favored if that's a thing. So, but yeah, they didn't really blow up as much as I expected it to be honest.
I feel like that would have potentially been bigger news just by hearing it. It looks like they banned Legion in Game 2 and Game 3 in the third phase.
Yeah,
and then it went not picked or banned in Game 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So it was right moment, right situation, right potential abuse. And now it's not something you can do because it was fixed.
I assume so. I assume it was fixed. It's possible it's still there. To be honest, there's a 5% part of me that is maybe it wasn't a bug at all. Maybe we just had a misread of the situation. I never went back and tried it or anything. When you have the 2-time TI winner saying this is happening in the game, I'm not about to second guess him.
You're well, actually, Notail. Let's open up the log and see how much damage is being done.
Yeah, if that was somebody else with less authority on the matter, then my natural instinct would be to hedge my bet in that situation. Mm-hmm. And be are you sure it's doing that much? Are we sure it's... Because it did look like a lot of damage, but, I would always hedge my bets. But when Notail's saying it, I'm just whatever. He's saying it, I'm all on board. Because if he's wrong, whatever. It's the 2-time TI winner is wrong. What are you going to say? What are you going to do?
What do you chalk up to TSM having a relatively poor event? tough group, just like not caliber of everybody else, like bad luck. Like I was hopeful that they were gonna do a little bit better than they did.
Yeah, they didn't do great. I mean, they beat out Fnatic to place, so they had to beat Fnatic in 2 different elimination matches, one to tie, and then they had to win the tiebreaker. But Fnatic didn't look great either. Their group was tough. Nigma and Tundra were in top 3. Tundra was in the grand finals. Nigma was 3rd, and they looked really, really good. And then they had the TI winners in Team Spirit, so their group looks really tough. And then they had to play Team Secret to move on. So, yeah, like I don't want to give like too many excuses to NA. But you know, if they were in Team Spirit's position, Team Spirit played Nigma Galaxy C. I would hope TSM would win that matchup. I would hope, but yeah, and I do think that they had some rough matchups, but you play who you play, you know, whoever's in front of you, that's who you gotta play, and that's who you gotta beat. So, yeah.
Do you want to
also one other little bit there? Maybe this actually might have contributed to my bad mood and my fucking essay on Reddit. I did the grand finals with Kuro and Notail, and I hope Kuro's okay with me saying this, because I did brag about it. I know Kuro wouldn't brag about these things, but I'm a different person than you, Kuro, and I bragged about this. I didn't brag a whole lot of people, but now I'm about to do it on the podcast.
You're about to do like a lot
of
of people really quickly.
And I'm saying more so, one, because I just think this is really cool, and also I think this will kind of tell Kuro's character a little bit. But so we finished up the grand finals. Notail walks away. And at some point in time, like we've done the wrap up and everything, and it's me and Kuro obviously is part of the organization who put on the event. So he thanks me for working the event, and he asked me like how did I feel the event went and all that sort of thing. And then he you know, he thanked me for doing the event, and he said that he thinks I'm really awesome. That I'm really I think he said amazing at what I do, something like that. And actually, hold on. He said he thought I was amazing, and he said he was a big fan.
That feels like a pretty good compliment. That feels like a pretty that feels gratifying, right?
I don't think that there is another pro player out there that would give me more satisfaction to get that kind of compliment from. Because if you know Kuro, which I don't know him like incredibly well or anything, but like from what I understand of his personality is that like he is like a very passionate individual, very disciplined, but he doesn't like necessarily like give compliments out lightly, and that like also just talking with him and stuff, he's like one of the very few conversations I've had with him. He's one of the people who have opened my ideas the most about Dota. And he told me a bit of his philosophy when it comes to looking at the draft, and like I will always keep that in mind of like, oh, this is what Kuro thinks. And like you can tell from his casting, right? Like Notail would be a lot more like, oh, this is good, this is bad, and Kuro would always be dialing it back more and be like, well, there's ways that things can be good and where things can be bad. And so like he told me about that philosophy, and like I've always taken that more to heart whenever I talk about drafts and stuff.
I was surprised at how like optimistic he was at times from pulling stuff back from Notail, especially like during Game 5, where I think Notail was almost, you know, he was again being himself. It's not like he was being a character, but I think in being himself, he's like, this game's fucking over. How do you beat this? And Kuro's like, well, this, that, and this. Like, I don't think Dota's never over. Like, the game is relatively even. And it was interesting to see that dichotomy for me, not just in personalities, but almost in in mental state, because you could assume that when they're playing, that's also kind of what could be going on in their head or through comms. You know.
Yeah. That's definitely something that you could see quite a lot in the casting, and you could see it when they would talk about Dota. Like, they wouldn't stop talking about Dota, right? Once the game is done, they would just keep going. And what was probably the most interesting conversation that happened between Notail and Kuro was actually off camera, sadly, and it was them talking about the TI finals that they played against each other. And you could just kind of tell that like Kuro knew they could have done better, you know. They could have made things work. They could have done things better. They could have played, but they also had to play the lower bracket. And that was actually something that they talked about, which I will probably reference several times through my career, is that like lower bracket at TI is a different kind of beast. Having to do that is like mentally is kind of bonkers. That's why like think only one or two teams have ever won from the lower bracket. They've only won a TI going through the lower bracket and having to play 8 games in one day potentially. So
I almost want to fact check that, because I could have sworn that it was more. Navi won from the
Alliance.
upper bracket.
Navi won from the upper bracket.
IG won from the lower bracket.
IG was also in the lower bracket. Alliance was in the upper bracket.
Alliance was the upper bracket team. Okay.
VG Gaming climbed their way through the lower bracket.
And lost to, so Newbie was upper bracket. Okay, so
and
far
lost to Newbie.
It's just IG. Evil Geniuses won in the lower bracket, so that's 2.
That's 2. Yeah.
Wings upper bracket.
Liquid lower bracket.
Liquid lower bracket 3.
OG double upper bracket.
It was upper bracket both times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Because the TI8, they should have gone down to the lower bracket, but LGD threw that game 3.
And Team Spirit won from the lower bracket.
Team Spirit won from the lower bracket.
So I'm 4 out of 10?
4 out of 10, which...
That's almost half.
It's almost half. I think I felt like the number was 3. I guess I forgot about IG. IG is probably who I forgot about.
That's ancient history.
So, but yeah, I think the way they talked about it, I think they both feel like it's a very, very big factor when it comes to TI and grand finals and stuff. So, because they were obviously talking about it in the context of Boom having to play their 8th game of the day because they went the full best of 3.
That's so much Dota.
Yeah. So that's what happened in Dubai. A lot of good stuff. Some stuff that made me angry, but then a lot of good stuff. Oh, one other side note, real quickly. So Ukraine was happening during that time. We talked about that.
Still happening.
Of course. Yeah, it was like, oh, you guys are now casting a tournament in the United Arab Emirates, and all those sort of things. And what I just thought was very fucking funny, I had no idea that. So Enigma Galaxy was putting on the tournament, Galaxy Racers, whatever. They're putting on the tournament. I did not, I guess, know their full extent. When the tournament opens and they play that first video hyping up the UAE, I was just like, oh my goodness. Oh, that is going to be a thing that happens every break. Oh my. I thought that was very, very funny, very ironic, I think, in some ways. It was just like, did not realize that tournament was going to be sponsored in that regard. I'm not going to say I would have said no to it. I still would have done the tournament, but it did come as a surprise to me, and I thought it was.
It's like, wow, funny. Why did we get all these UAE flag wardrobe suits to wear? Like, oh boy. Yeah.
Dude, those
I'm glad
Neon
that you had a
ads,
good.
you remember Neon? You remember that whole thing?
Oh yeah, of course.
Those ads are everywhere. Oh my God. The airport, every single time I would get on like Google or Twitter or anything, the Neon advertisements are everywhere, you know? They make it out to be like it's the bee's knees over there, man. It is the height of technology and culture right there. All the greatest minds are in Neon.
I mean, I'd be interested in walking around.
Yeah. They some people stayed behind and did the Dubai Expo 2020. I was not one of those people. I was like, nope, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
You gotta get home and prepare for Sweden because you're taking off and
Yeah,
you're gonna
exactly.
go do more DPC. Same, everybody's. It's the year, right? So that's still North America and like really weird time zones for you.
Yeah, it's not the worst time zones. But it's Western Europe and North America. So I will be the host once again for North America, but I should be doing some casting with SVG, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Not very much casting, but I got a bit, got a smidgen, negotiated a little bit, and yeah.
Is it
Looking
worth it?
forward to it.
Is it worth it to talk about the patch at all?
Patch is good. Some of the patch is fun, but most of the patch feels very similar to the old patch. And that part is probably, I mean, we've already seen it. A lot of people don't like that. Some pro players don't like that. Think people really want map changes. Yeah, all the changes were good, or not all of them. Some of them, they buffed up heroes that were already meta. So, like, what was the point? Like, we're seeing still so many crossovers of heroes, because if the map doesn't change, the economy doesn't change that much. Like, the way you play the game isn't going to change. And it's only really going to change if the heroes are dramatically changed. And I feel like, I don't know if they were just happy with the previous patch and didn't want to like change up the vibe that much, but
Is it just because, like, all at the end of the day, all of the changes to neutral creeps don't really affect the game that much? Because it seems like if you were to break everything down and you look at the patch and you go like, what changed? Normally, like, people point out one or two things per patch that's different, you know? It's like gold bounties, or they added new heroes, or they moved Roshan, or they changed the map, or what have you, right? But here, or they added, you know, neutral items, or what have you. Here, it seems like if you're to point out a thing, it's mostly centered around neutral creeps in addition to the balance updates. And I haven't noticed much difference going on in my own pubs because of the neutral creep changes.
Yeah. Well, I expected to see more Beastmaster like in Chen and Chantress. Not nearly as much as I expected. Maybe it's still gonna come around, but yeah, I definitely expected a bigger impact there. As somebody put, you know, I got this line from somebody else. Mm-hmm. And Kyle then got this line from me and then used it on the panel. I was so fucking mad at him. I was like, "What the fuck, dude?" I'm sitting there casting and I'm listening to their panel, and Kyle's like, "Yeah, I heard somebody say," and I was just like, "Motherfucker, that was me." The thing is that, and I don't actually remember who I got this from. I think it might have been maybe somebody on Arkosh or something. He said, "You know, doing this jungling." Actually, no, I got it from a pub. So some pro player in a pub. I'm not sure who. They said doing this jungling, it doesn't slow me down at all. It's not any harder, but I'm just more annoyed when I do it. Which is kind of what the neutral creeps are now. Now they're just kind of annoying. There are these annoying things that they do to you sometimes, but it doesn't really slow you down that much. So as a result, the meta isn't going to shift that much, right? Stacking's still going to be important. Carries that can clear through, mids that can clear through stacks are going to be important. TA, Leshrac, Lina, maybe. Yeah, those kind of heroes. So Honestly, the biggest changes were like I feel like the biggest meta changes were like the Bracer Null Talisman change, and like Orchid.
What is it about Orchid?
Orchid's less of a intelligence hero item, and because it no longer gives intelligence or attack speed, now it gives flat damage. So now it's can be picked up on a variety of different heroes, but it's less impactful for intelligence heroes. So so Orchid is a popular item, which is way different from the previous patch where every team had 2 Orchids. So yeah, I don't know. It's like Kunkka, for example, still building Orchid. He's like, shit, this Orchid's even better now. Hell yeah. So that's 2 of the most impactful changes I've seen so far anyway. Neutral Creeps hasn't really done that much. The biggest change was probably the shard change, 15-minute shard change. That one was obviously very impactful as well. But like, we didn't get to see any techies. That was sad. Wanted to see some techies. Didn't get to see any, the new hero, Primal Beast.
Yeah, that's like the thing, right? Broken. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the win rates, it's still, I think, in the negative. So what's broken about it?
If you look at my win rate, you'll see it's 9-0, 100% win rate, baby.
The hero's primarily being played in the offlane, and you're primarily a good offlane player, and the hero looks to be... my favorite part about Primal Beast, this isn't really a hot take, the animation on the ultimate is very funny.
He's like a toddler having a tantrum. Okay, so let me I'll give you like a 1-minute take on one Primal Beast is broken. Okay. Number 1, Trample can clear a creep wave at level 1. So you can literally go behind the enemy tier 1, start near their tier 2 tower, body block the creep wave just a tiny little bit, activate Trample, and run with it all the way to the tier 1 tower. You will one-shot the entire creep wave. So, laning, never a problem, because you can do that at level 1, okay? Level 2, you can get Uproar, which has some of the most insane stats on it for an ability that is essentially free. For a hero, for a lane position, that is usually that the entire process is being harassed and trying to survive through that harassment and maybe even kill your harassers. Having a hero that gets bonkers stats when he is attacked is insane. It's insanely valuable. The support for the enemy 5 position literally doesn't have a job, because if he hits you once, just a single uproar is a single uproar tick is enough for you to be able to activate it and get all the CS in lane, because you now have 30 damage, I think. 30 extra bonus damage, and you get some armor. And it also slows them.
Do you only get the bonus? Do you only get the bonus when you activate it, or is there passive?
Only when you activate it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I think the biggest thing was that the hero felt like it didn't do any damage with Trample by itself. Now people realize that if you activate Uproar before you Trample, your damage is insane. And that was before the patch. I mostly played it post-patch, where they buffed it some more. And that has been really good, because now Trample's damage without Uproar is insanely good. His Q is a really good initiating tool. He is destroyed by stuns and slows. That is the downside of him. But BKB is the most valuable item in the game. So you just rush that. I think it's hero doesn't quite play itself, but it does feel very good to me. I think it's strong. So yeah, I also think Techies is strong. Not as nearly as good as Primal Beast, nor as easy to play, but I also think Techies is strong. And I have a 0% win rate on support Techies. 100% win rate on core Techies, but 0% on support Techies.
Is the goal with Techies to make it more of a support hero? Was that the intention here? Or is it still like pretty ambiguous?
No, I think pretty ambiguous. I think before it was obviously a support hero, and I think especially the last patch change they did, it's can fill more and more of a core role. Because blast off, you don't do any damage to yourself. Now they made it based on your current HP. They lowered the percentage even more, and you have a magic resistance talent at level 10. So it's like all those things combined, you do no damage to yourself when you blast off on people. So that was really bad for core. Now it's way more manageable. So I think it's a very strong core, or I think it's good as a core. Still questionable as the support, probably need to be built around a little bit. Kind of want a setup stun of some kind, but I think the damage that it puts out is pretty bonkers. So also, he's not called Techies anymore. According to Slacks, he's called Funny Bomb Man, because he's not really Techies anymore. Listen, as somebody who liked old Techies, I have a lot of fun playing new Techies. I think the hero is shit tons of fun.
I'm glad that it seems like you two are taking different paths, where he is having some kind of emotional crisis where you are finding the joy in the situation.
He's having an identity crisis, because if he's not a Techies player, what is he? You know?
I'm sure that there's a lot of people who have played a lot of games with Slacks who are probably have a general quality of life improvement with the patch.
Yeah, probably.
I bet the change to the hero has some percentage lowered stress across the globe. Like the amount of humans who get upset on a daily basis because of a single thing being changed went down.
Yeah.
That sounds like that's like one step away from world peace.
From a utilitarian standpoint, this was one of the best things that Valve has ever done, for sure. Because while some people are very unhappy, like Slacks, the general Dota society has been made much happier. So,
now, do you think that is actually good for Dota? Because so the counter argument there, right, is you have some percentage of the population like Slacks who are just Techies lovers. That's all they want to do. That's all they want to play. They have this hero, and it's kind of the reason why they play Dota. Now, those people either have to decide if they want to stop playing Dota or not, because the thing that they loved so much about this game was just changed forever.
Yeah. It's like many things Valve has done lately. I think it's good, but might be a bit too late. I think some people might have already quit Dota because of Techies.
That's true.
You know, I think this move is, I think it's generally good, but there is something about it that bothers me. And it's the same thing that bothers me when I see one of my heroes, or just heroes in general, where a weakness gets covered in some way. Dota has always been a game, and this is why it's much different than League of Legends. It is I'm going to give you my big world view of Dota versus League of Legends in this regard.
Okay.
Dota is made what it is by the fact that there are heroes with OP abilities. They have strong strengths, very, very strong strengths, if that makes any sense. Basically, if there was a fucking, one of those RPG bars or whatever the fuck, like D&D, that guy's got 20 in strength, but he's got a fucking 8 in intelligence. He can't actually speak. That is what Dota heroes, I think, philosophically speaking, are about. They have strong strengths and weak weaknesses. They cannot do shit in some areas, but they are incredibly powerful in other regards. Black Hole is a great example of it's a BKB piercing AoE disable. Insanely good, but has one of the longest cooldowns in the game, requires you to have large amounts of farm for you to be effective, and if you miss, you're fucked. You literally don't have a fourth hero or fifth hero in the game. It's 4 versus 5 once you miss that black hole. So, strong strengths, weak weaknesses. Big division there. Whereas in League of Legends, I feel like the heroes are built up very much in that like every hero has a toolkit that operates under the same sphere of influence, the same strength metrics, right? Their weaknesses are generally not that weak, and their strengths are also generally not like incredibly explosive. So that's where Dota and League of Legends end up diverging so much, is the fact that League of Legends becomes much more of a tactical and skill-based game, where it's about how you operate the hero, whereas Dota becomes much more of a strategy-based game. If you get Blink BKB black holed by Enigma, it does not matter anymore how good you are at the game. You are dead. You are 100% dead. There's no counterplay to that whatsoever. However, if you understand the game well enough and understand the strategy that is involved there, it does not matter if you are dead, because then you come back alive and you run at the enemy, right? Or whatever, right? Whatever the strategy or ploy is. Mm-hmm. So that I think is philosophically like the differences in Dota and where they divulge so much. And Dota has been trending for a long time in that heroes' weaknesses are being covered up. Neutral items, shards, Aghanims upgrades. There are so many talents. There are so many things where basically if you look at a hero and say like, so the problem with this hero is, let me give Terrorblade as an example. So the problem with this hero is once he pops Metamorphosis, he's incredibly strong, but once he loses it, he's no longer a hero. Think about all the things that change for that. Scotty has been made more effective. He now has an Aghanim Scepter that gives him a temporary ultimate. He has a shard that makes him better as a melee hero. He's been given more items to be able to utilize as a melee hero. He has talents that are able to cover up some of these weaknesses. Like the Blink Dagger, Agility Blink Dagger is like generally better for melee heroes. Like the list goes on and on and on of like things that allow you to be better at the things you are worst at. Mm-hmm. So that is the place that Dota has been going. And I feel like in a way, Techies is just kind of one example of that, where they basically just made him like, he's more of a normal hero now. And they took away like the incredible strength that he had. Right? Now he's just like Skywrath Mage sort of, and like insane nuke damage potential. Fortunately, they kept Blast Off, which I think was the other signature ability. They kind of kept that as it is, but I think in some ways, like, Techies is no longer a you can always come back with hero, you know, where he used to be that. He used to be that, like, no matter how strong the enemy was, you could always win with Techies. No matter how farmed the enemy carry was, enough mines would fucking kill him, you know? Now Techies is no longer that. He can never reach that version of strength. He will never be that powerful. But he's also much stronger in many other areas. So I think he's just more of a diluted hero. I personally find him very fun, but that is just a general trend of Dota that, I go back and forth on. You know, sometimes I think it's bad, sometimes I think it's good.
Yeah, just like bringing people down to the averages is kind of like my takeaway there. Like you have these things that feel extreme, and they just get like a little bit neutered, and not necessarily by nerfs, but by changes. And I think I'd have to sit with that for a minute. I'd have to sit with that for a minute and really think about how I feel.
If Dota, this version of Dota was out in 2012, I think Dota would be a much more popular game. Let's put it that way. But there are people who played Dota in 2012, 2013, who don't like the Dota that it is now. I'm okay with that last fact, because I think games, in order to stay relevant, you always have to be changing. So it's, I don't really begrudge the changes at all. But it's just a general trend that I've noticed that I don't know if it's good or bad.
I'd be interested in hearing a league expert's opinion as a counterpoint for like the sameness of the game over time in comparison.
Yeah.
I think someone would be like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about," but really that does hit home, because I feel like I don't want to say Dota's gotten easier, but maybe it should have been a little less extreme.
Yeah, could be.
But I mean, at the end of the day, we're still complaining about something that is objectively like still one of the top 5 largest esports in the world. Like, oh, maybe it could have been bigger. Maybe it could have has more longevity. Like, we're still here and thriving. So I think that, you know, it's almost like we're fantasy booking ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think popularity isn't that important to me. So when I say it might have been more popular, you know, like also Fortnite is really popular, and I have no desire to play that game, right? So just because something could have been more popular doesn't mean. And simultaneously, if Dota is moving away from where it used to be, then that is also not the worst thing to me.
And on that note, on popularity, go follow. It's at Capcasts on Twitter and Instagram, so you can go ahead and get caught up with all the updates.
Yeah.
Before we sign off, this has been a little bit of a longer one. There's been some fun things to talk about, and also I feel like y'all deserved it because you might have missed an episode last week because of travel and a whole bunch of other stuff. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have another edition of PPUMAWUT, our patreon.com/side poll fan question segment that we toss at the end of shows. And if you want to join us on Patreon, you can also get a question or hypothetical just tossed in here at the back end and really make us talk about anything. True. So Erds left us a comment, Cap, that I tossed into your Discord if you don't mind reading.
Hey lads, I'm about to graduate and soon to apply for a job in the business industry. As an Australian that has previously just gotten over using overly Australian language, I still have to practice not using the F word a lot. As people that broadcast to the international community while working for business, have you guys had to change your common vocabulary before localized common phrases, etc.? Ooh, there is a phrase that I've been trying to work out of my vocabulary just recently. Joey, I think you might have heard me use this one. In fact, you might have actually been the one to make me aware of it.
Oh. See, now I feel weird in the situation because what I want to say is I'm pretty sure that you're trying to say bitch less.
Oh.
No?
No, actually. No. I'm you know, like I went like a full circle there. I did try and say bitch less, and then at some point in time I was just like, I don't feel that strongly about it. maybe you know, maybe I'll get some education. Whoa, I'm accidentally calling Blitz. Sorry. Let me just say whoops.
Hey, Will. Sorry, Will.
Maybe something will happen. Somebody will tell me something and I'll feel differently about it. But no, the word spaz. Haven't I used that in front of you?
I don't think I
feel like you're the one who told me about this.
I don't think so. So there's let's take a step back for a second here. I think that there's different like tiers of acceptability of like words that whether they be like regional or otherwise that people try and remove from their vocabulary. Example, we've gotten to a point where it is just wholly unacceptable to use racial slurs. I genuinely don't feel like it was like that 20 years ago. But we're here now, right? That's like S tier, and then there's like a middle tier of words where like depending on how your region or your beliefs or your friend group like or how social justice
like
cucky
cunt?
you are, like yes.
That word makes Americans incredibly uncomfortable, and Brits just throw it out there constantly. And that's kind of like that tier where you're talking about, right? Where it's like localized, some areas it's like totally fine, other areas it's like okay, you're starting to get a little dicey there. Yeah,
and then there's words that feel like much less popular to remove from vocabulary, and that's where I would include spaz. Now, spaz is not one that I say very often, but it's probably something that I'd be cognizant about. And a similar note, and I don't think I've ever talked to you about this, but I often think about not using the word crazy to describe people for a similar reason of spaz, because it's been used a lot to you know attack mental disorders, and I've been personally called out for that probably more times than any other word.
Really?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I have a bunch of like super liberal cucky friends. Let's be clear. And I still use crazy, but when I will say it more often than not, which is more rare, I will think about it and go, could I have used a different word? It doesn't stop me from using it, but I'm definitely cognizant of it and use it a lot less. And I feel like spaz is like in a very similar play space as that for me.
I'm saying the word retarded less because of that. But I do not... Maybe I'm just living in the past here, but maybe I'll feel differently about this in 10, 15, 20 years, but crazy is not... there's no way I'm removing that from my vocabulary. I'm sorry. That word is far too broad for me. That so I didn't realize that spaz was used as a word to refer to people who are spastic, who have spasms and therefore probably have some sort of mental issues of some kind. That, and I never made that connection whatsoever, because that was just something that my dad and probably my mom, both of them, would call. And for me, it just meant goofy or like the term goober. So I thought it was very harmless. And maybe it was on stream. Maybe I called somebody a spaz and somebody was like, whoa. And I was like, wait, what? Something wrong with that word? I thought it was very, very like, instead of calling somebody a stupid motherfucker, I call him a goober and a spaz. Look at this spaz over here. And I didn't realize that it had that kind of connotations. So that is a word that I have tried to cut out. But crazy is... Am I crazy here? Like,
No.
like that word is like too broad. I feel like that's like calling somebody stupid. Like, yeah, there are stupid people out there. They have low IQ. But I'm still going to call you stupid.
What's super...
I don't know what to say. It's such a broad term.
What's interesting to me, as you know, there's people who are listening to this literally across the world, which, by the way, is kind of cool. But also, you know, their interpretation of our interpretation, I'm sure there's a bunch of people thinking a bunch of different things. There's probably people who
I'm fairly certain most of them think that we're insanely too sensitive.
Yeah.
That is most of the feedback that I've gotten from the internet world, which is like, oh, those Americans, they're so sensitive about language, you know?
Yeah.
Since we have an international audience, that's my assumption.
Yeah, I agree. I'm
not saying they're wrong or right. I'm just saying that's what I believe is popular.
I haven't used any hard R's for probably 5+ years at this point. And I think bitch is gonna
retarded, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. When you say hard R, that's an entirely different connotation, Joey.
No.
I haven't said that word in like 5 years.
You know. Thank you for clarifying. The look on your face was so funny. But I think to answer Erd's question, it's probably a situation of over-indexing into being careful, or having a group of people around you who you could maybe fact check yourself with in private. If there's something that if you're not sure you should be saying in like international conversations, my assumption is that your gut's probably right about that.
Or you could do it on the podcast like I do.
Yeah, or
in a very public forum.
Yeah, or you just be very public about it. But yeah, if you're gonna be working with Americans, I imagine that some of your Australian language is a bit harsh because you use other words like we use fuck.
Yeah, so the F word slur that you're talking about, the gay slur, which is sometimes locally used. So I had a same problem where I had to cut that out. But this was back in like, I don't know, 2012 or something. But like, that's a word that like many Americans use as an insult in like during our elementary school, high school days.
Especially
like
for us.
Common go-to.
Dude,
yeah.
like
our generation used it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And and while I was very much a person who's like, people should say whatever people should be free to say whatever you want. What it eventually came down to, and I don't know if this will help you, but it's like, the personal gratification that I use that I get out of using a word like that. Even if I don't mean it in a homophobic way, the personal gratification that I get out of the freedom of using that word. Do I value that more than the potential of harming somebody who maybe I care about, or maybe just somebody I don't care about, but I don't want to hurt people randomly? Is that personal freedom and like satisfaction that I get more valuable than the harm that I would be doing to other people? And like, I decided for me personally that was not worth it. Because like, for example, I had somebody who I was a friend with in high school that was closeted. And even though I never, ever felt any sort of homophobic way, it is very likely I used that word. And I may have used it around him. Never in a homophobic
or
way.
Or to him. like.
Yeah, and that's entirely possible. And I found out after high school, he came out and everything like that. And so like, I have no idea what kind of harm I may have done to him by using that word. So it's like, is it really worth it to me? It's also like, it's somewhat similar to the mask thing. Like, is your personal freedom, like satisfaction of not having this irritating mask over your mouth, like really that fucking worth it to you over the potential of ruining lives? Probably not. Just make that own like personal like algorithm and like be like, is this worth it to me? Some people are going to say it is worth it to them, in which case I think those people are kind of psychopaths because like,
or selfish
or incredibly selfish, because like, why would you want to hurt people? It's like people you don't even know sometimes, or people you do care about.
It's wild how much my opinion of language changed after high school. I think that I probably lived most of my life up until about 20-ish with a predominantly libertarian point of view of like, hey, y'all, we should be expressing all of our freedoms. Like, you shouldn't tell me what I can and can't do because I can't do it and it's not really your business. To, I think somewhere I grew empathy and now I'm thinking about other people. And while I still agree that anybody has the right to say these things, like, doing it makes you shitty. And why would you want to be not nice? And then that's where I stand on it. If I would kick the shit out of 18-year-old me.
Well, it's because teenagers are psychopaths, so.
Yeah, it's like I was trying to be funny.
They're heartless little monsters.
I was trying to be funny always, but just in the wrong ways and ways that edged into hurtfulness. And I still I still am funny. That's presumptuous. At other people's expenses. Like, some of my favorite humor is like lightly tearing down others or my friends. But like I'm pretty content with the evolution that I've had, and I want to keep growing, and that's why I have a lot of friends who are like, hey, Joey, if you're cutting out some of those words, like, maybe say bitch less, and I'm like, to point to you. So that's the one that's most recently fallen out of my vocabulary. And I just like to.
Meanwhile, I'm over here playing Primal Beast on stream, pumping out Ludacris's "Move, bitch, get out the way, get."
And you're also like listening to R. Kelly, and you're like, man, this guy is. Ugh.
Yo, have you guys heard the remix to Ignition? That song's a fire.
It's really, really good. If you. Urge, I hope that any of that was helpful. I think that we probably just frustrated literally 100, if not more people. If you want to support us on Patreon so we can say more dumb shit while we're on our podcast soapbox, it's patreon.com/sidepull. Next time we are here, Cap will be in Europe again, and the time zones will be different. But this will be out on Tuesday, and I think that we'll be back to our more regular, predictable cadence. I know that the last couple of weeks have been just like a little bit off by a day or a whole week. So pardon our construction, and give us money. Patreon.com/sidepull. Anything else, Cap? I'm gonna press the off button.
Keep giving us money for the bad job that we're doing.
Perfect.